Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Halo Chronicle. Today is the final part of my Fall of the Forerunner series. To better understand what is taking place in today's video, I highly recommend you check out the other videos in this series first. Last week, we discussed the activation of the Halo Array. After the fall of the Greater Ark, Born Stellar and a small contingent of Forerunners led by Offensive Bias made it to the Lesser Ark. Born Stellar opened a slip space portal and dispersed the 6 Halo installations residing at the Ark. The Librarian made her way to Requiem to confront her husband, the Didact, for composing her human specimens. With the assistance of one of his lieutenants, the Librarian subdued the Didact, locking him away in his cryptum. Her hope was that the Didact could connect with the domain to heal his madness. She then locked down Requiem and made her way to Erde Tyrene. Chant to Green, a senior life worker, gathered all of the remaining human populations on Erde Tyrene. The Librarian passes her title of Life Shaper to Chant and orders her to take her specimens to the Lesser Ark. The Librarian then sends a message to all Forerunner ships stating that a cure to the Flood has been found. This message is intended to draw the Flood away from Born Stellar and the Lesser Ark. She then orders the construction of a great portal on Erde Tyrene. While overseeing the construction of this great portal, the Librarian is greeted by several infected human impressions. One takes the form of Forthencio, the Lord of Admirals. The former ancient human commander informs the Librarian that when the Halos are fired, the domain will be destroyed. She sends a message to Born Stellar to warn him about the terrible crime that is about to be committed. The Lesser Ark comes under siege. Mendicant Bias's flood-infested forces break through the Lesser Ark's defensive perimeter. Born Stellar, left with no other options, presses the activation plate. The Halo Array is then fired, wiping out all life in the galaxy. Now that I've recapped what happened in last week's episode, let's jump into the series finale of this epic story. After the firing of the Halo Array, the remaining Forerunners were left to pick up the pieces of the universe. Thanks to the Librarian's leadership, the life workers around the Ecumene were able to gather and collect specimens. These specimens were either stored on the Ark or stored in silexes on the Halos themselves. These specimens were a key component to the Forerunners' plan to repopulate the universe. It would take some time for the remaining Forerunners to prepare and release these specimens. One of the first species that was awoken after the array was fired were the humans. Among the surviving humans was Riser. Riser acted as Chakos' mentor on Erde Tyrene. He also accompanied Born Stellar and Chakos when the Didact was revived from his meditative exile on Erde Tyrene. Born Stellar and Riser would have a reunion of sorts. They would discuss what happened towards the end of the war. Riser condemned Born Stellar for firing the array, but still respected his friend. This conversation would end with Born Stellar inviting Riser to a very special trial. The revived human population stationed on the Ark would attend the trial of the rogue Ancilla, Mendicant Bias. Born Stellar presided over the trial. Mendicant Bias's construct would be slowly lowered into a tomb beneath the Ark's surface. It would condemn the Forerunners for halting the progress of the universe. In the end, Born Stellar would not sentence Mendicant Bias to be destroyed. Mendicant's processes would be locked and it would be left entombed under the Ark with only one thought to ponder: Atonement. Born Stellar believed that Mendicant Bias's intimate knowledge of the Flood could prove useful should the parasite return. To protect the universe from the possible return of Mendicant Bias, Offensive Bias was ordered to stand guard over its tomb. Following the completion of the trial, the humans and Forerunners would celebrate the birth of a new universe. This would be the last time Born Stellar and Riser would see each other. Riser asked Born Stellar what the Forerunners planned to do next. Born Stellar stated that once their mission of repopulating the galaxy was complete, they planned to leave the galaxy and venture into the stars as a sort of penance for their great crime. Shortly after this celebration, the humans were sent back to Erde Tyrene to begin the process of repopulating the galaxy. The remaining Forerunners would begin preparing and releasing specimens all across the galaxy. This process would take over 300 years. Sometime while this process was happening, an unknown group of Forerunners led by the Grand Edict who survived on the Lesser Ark would make contact with an advanced species called the Xylan, but you know them as the Endless. These Forerunners would discover that this species had somehow survived the Halo's radiation. They maintained advanced technology and were spacefaring. Fearing that they might interfere with humanity claiming the mantle, the Grand Edict arranged a parley between the two groups. This parley would take place on the formerly rogue Halo installation, Zeta Halo. During this parley, the Forerunners would forcefully imprison the Xylan in Silexes. These Silexes would be stored on Zeta Halo. To help guard these Silexes, the Grand Edict would order offensive bias go to the installation. All records of this encounter were hidden from all of the other remaining Forerunners, and the discovery of this information wouldn't happen until almost 100,000 years later. After 300 years of repopulating the galaxy, the surviving Forerunners were nearing the end of their last monumentally important task. In his grief, Bornsteller reviewed all records he had of the Librarian. In doing so, Bornsteller recalls the last message that she sent from Erde Tyrene. He initially ignored this message, thinking that it was a ruse created by the Flood. Bornsteller reviews the message and finds startling information. He is informed that the reason the domain has been inaccessible is that it resides in a neurophysical construct. The firing of the array has damaged or possibly destroyed this construct. Bornsteller reveals this information to the remaining Forerunners. Amongst them is the Chief Forerunner Counselor, Splendid Dust of Ancient Suns. Splendid Dust reveals that he knows about this construct that holds the domain. He reveals that it is located in the damaged Forerunner capital, Maithrillion. He also reveals that there may be a way to possibly restore the domain. Splendid Dust states that part of his first counselor's uniform contains a deadbolt key. When this key is inserted into the domain's construct, it will restart itself. The remaining Forerunners decide that they must restore the domain before leaving the galaxy for their eternal exile. In addition to finding and restoring the domain, the Forerunners also need to gather slipspace crystals from the capital so that they may leave the galaxy. Upon their arrival, the Forerunners would find Maithrillion to be a desolate place. The once proud symbol of the Forerunner governing body was reduced to a hollow shell of its former glory. The construct was completely disabled and lifeless. This was caused by Mendicant Bias's revolt. Many of the Forerunners started to believe that this venture was a lost cause, but they had to try. The belief was that in order for humanity or any other species to thrive and assume the mantle, they would need to access the domain. Before entering the structure, Splendid Dust would reveal that the domain's construct contained an ancilla. This ancilla was the only known ancilla to be created by the precursors. It was called Abaddon. Abaddon was the ancilla that taught the Forerunners how to access and use the domain. The Forerunners began searching the remnants of Maithrillion. During their search, Abaddon's voice could be heard throughout the facility. It stated that the Forerunners betrayed the galaxy and must be punished for their crimes. It wanted to put this group on trial. After a brief confrontation, the Forerunners pushed into the chamber called the Mysterium. In this chamber, the Forerunners would find hundreds of artifacts that other Forerunners had gathered throughout their recorded history. After a long and exhaustive search, the Forerunners would locate the precursor structure that encased the domain. This structure was not destroyed, but was severely damaged. Abaddon would appear and send mechanized spider-like creatures to attack the returning group of Forerunners. Chant to Green would take possession of the deadbolt key and locate the domain's lock. She attempted to insert the key but was stopped by Abaddon's forces. Growth through trial of change, another life worker would gather up the key and insert it into the lock. Abaddon and Trial would disappear in a blinding flash. Maithrillion would power back online for the first time in over 1,000 years. the domain would begin to heal itself and restore what was lost. Knowing that their mission was successful, the Forerunners returned to the Ark to make their final preparations. Before leaving, the first counselor, Splendid Dust, decided that he wanted to remain on the Ark to assist humanity when they came to claim the mantle. To secure his position, Splendid Dust was composed and put into a monitor. He would then be known as Tragic Solitude, the monitor of Installation 00, aka the Ark. Unfortunately for Splendid Dust, he would go rampant due to his crippling loneliness. 100,000 years later, he would attempt to assist the Covenant, led by the Prophet of Truth, in activating the Halo Array once more. All of the remaining Forerunners would depart the Milky Way using the Librarian's vessel, the Audacity. It is believed that they exiled themselves to Path Chthona. In their exile, Born Stellar and the last Life Shaper, Chantigreen, would marry and have a child. They would adapt a primitive lifestyle and become farmers on a remote planet. Born Stellar's ultimate fate still remains a mystery, but it is assumed that he has long since passed. The fall of the Forerunners is a sad tale. Once they were the most powerful species in the galaxy, but through a series of unfortunate events, arrogance, and a lack of communication led to their quick and swift downfall. In the end, the Forerunners left the galaxy with a great gift: a clean slate to grow and prosper, a future without their interference, and a weapon array that could combat any ancient threat should it return. They would also leave a curse. The Didact would remain trapped in his cryptum, with only his madness to keep him company for over 100,000 years. But that is a story for another time. That is going to conclude this series. I hope you guys enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed creating it. Before I tie things up, let's talk about some interesting bits of lore related to today's video. First, let's talk about the conservation measure. The last species that was reseeded by the Forerunners would cause the most havoc after their departure. The Sanshayum, aka the Prophets, would be the last species reseeded. This gave them access to a Forerunner key ship. This ship would give them information about the Forerunners, who they would see as gods. This view would be the foundation for the creation of one of the most powerful factions in the universe, the Covenant. The next interesting fact is about mendicant bias. The construct that encases mendicant bias on the Ark was used for the basis for a Halo 3 multiplayer map called Epitaph. So next time you're playing on that map, remember that mendicant bias is literally buried beneath your feet. A holographic projection of offensive bias is also present on the map. Another interesting fact about mendicant bias: though the formerly rogue Ancilla's main construct is buried on the Ark, shards of its personality matrix are stored on several key ships. One of these key ships was the very same key ship that the Sanshayum would find after their receding. They interacted with this shard of mendicant bias and called it an oracle. In fact, many of the decisions that they made were based on their interactions with this oracle. And now some final facts about Born Stellar. At the beginning of Born Stellar's story, he is seeking precursor treasure. He is seeking a device called the Organon. This device was supposed to restore all life to the precursor structures in the galaxy. Little did he know that the Organon was actually discovered millions of years before his birth. The Forerunners found the Organon in space and built their capital, Maithrillion, around it. The Organon is actually Obadon's construct and the housing for the domain. That is how the Forerunners first met Obadon and learned the secrets of the domain. Though Born Stellar's fate is still unknown, let me throw some fuel onto the rumors that he is still alive and well. At the end of Born Stellar's story in Halo Fractures, he is a farmer and is living a primitive lifestyle, but he still has access to the Librarian ship, the Audacity. He routinely visits the ship, and we are told that his life assist armor is still very much intact. In fact, he is maintaining it. This theoretically means that he could connect to the armor and still be alive in the present-day Halo universe. Thank you for watching today's video and watching this series in general. Overall, this has been a great experience, but I am ready to get started on my next journey, Series 2. Series 2 will chronicle the events that take place in Halo First Strike, as well as 2 other Halo books. That series will make its debut next week. I hope to see you there. A reminder, if you are enjoying this content and want to see more, please consider subscribing. If you want to help the channel grow, don't forget to leave a comment and share these videos with your friends. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.